Welcome to the Development and Assessment Committee meeting, Wednesday, 18th of March 2026. In accordance with the Moorabool Shire Council's governance rule, the meeting will be live streamed. Currently, we have 8 councillors here and Councillor Ward will be joining us online at some point. Confirmation of minutes from the last meeting. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor Minari, get a seconder. Councillor Bingham, all in favour? Carried. Matters arising from previous minutes, I think there are none. Presentations, deputations, there are none. Are there disclosure of conflicts of interest, councillors? No conflict of interests. Moving along. Moving along to the first item, community planning reports 9.1, earthworks associated with bike track to existing dwelling at 49 Hogarths Road, West Buninyong. We've got 2 speakers on the item. We've got Sandra Van Zyl first. So come up to the table, push the button in front, it'll turn green, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Bit nerve-wracking.
Thank you.
Okay, first I'd like to give some background. The applicant started major earthworks on the Easter holiday period in 2024. And when I contacted the building inspector, I was assured that a permit should have been requested but had not been submitted. Despite being contacted by this inspector, the earthworks continued and no permit request was lodged until the end of 2025, after many requests and contacts from the council. This then fails to reassure me that the permit holder will abide by any restrictions imposed by the council. It's also hard to visualise where the motorbike track, what the motorbike track looks like from the site diagram. In fact, it's sited on a very steep slope that covers a considerable area. The track has a slope of between 20 and 30 degrees, if not more, with hairpin bends, bumps, and loose soil and rock is banked along its length on the downside, ranging from about 1 to 3 metres in height. We are worried that with time and use, whatever the type of motorbike, the loose soil and rock will slide down onto our paddock. We have already experienced the invasion of many thistles and weeds that have proliferated in that loose soil. The steep slope also acts as a loudspeaker that directs noise, dirt and pollution straight at us only 200 metres away. This dirt soils our roof and prevents the collection of clean rainwater, which is our only supply of water. Now, the assertion that dirt can be controlled by watering the track is impractical, as a tanker cannot negotiate the motorbike track. Furthermore, on hot, windy days, how often can watering happen? It's impractical to hose the track because of its length and the restrictions that rainwater tanks impose on stored water. Also, a wet and steep slope can be dangerous for a young rider. We do not have town water available on Mount Buninyong and cannot install dams as an alternate supply. The nature of the soil does not allow water to be retained for much runoff or for much runoff to fill a dam. That's why there's no dams on Mount Buninyong. So you must weigh the applicant's wish for recreational pursuits against the needs of near neighbours to collect essential and clean rainwater. In conclusion, I urgently request that the Moorabool Shire partner with Ballarat Shire to protect Mount Buninyong with a complete landscape overlay so that future generations can delight in this area of natural beauty. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've just got a question for officers. Sandra Van Zyl just mentioned that she's concerned around the runoff of water. Are we confident that the runoff of water will go in the direction of the property and not their next door neighbours?
So, through the chair, the earthworks proposed are generally at ground level, so that it has been the scraping of the surface, and the conditions imposed is to prevent sediment runoff as opposed to water runoff, so the sediment doesn't move beyond, let's say, the trail of where those earthworks are. There is no suggestion that there will be any water damage. And Central Highlands Water, as the responsible catchment authority, has not objected to this proposal.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I just want to clarify a question with officers that the actual use of this particular track can't be considered in this actual permit. Is that correct?
So through the chair, this proposal is only for earthworks. The work's been undertaken, not how the earthworks are being used.
Second question for me, Mr Mayor. Is there a application required for the use after the track is built?
So through the chair, the track would only require planning permission if it was a use permit, which would be if it was a commercial operation. So that would be the only situation where a use permit would come into play for the works already done.
And if I may, Mr Mayor, one more. It was noted that there may have been an environmental overlay, but it's been confirmed by officers in the report that there isn't. Is that correct?
The subject land is covered by an environmental significance overlay Schedule 1, and that's why Central Highlands Water were notified of the application.
But that doesn't include modifying the land, is that correct?
Sorry, but
That doesn't include modification of the land or earthworks. Is that right?
the catchment authority is required to, so the environmental significance overlay Schedule 1 is a catchment control and that can include sediment runoff. That's why the catchment authority needs to be notified
So not in this case, it's been signed off by those people.
by Central Highlands Water, which is condition 6.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Councillor Bingham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Our question is council officers. I know we're not really supposed to be talking about the use because it's specifically about the dirt. But what else can these bike jumps be used for? Walking tracks, water aerobics? Is there any other potential uses for these tracks?
So through the chair, they are works to the site, so we don't dictate of how they're used, but they've got to be used by the occupants of the land. So it couldn't be, for example, a commercial or industrial operation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Call up next Kay Arnold. Same thing, switch the button on, it'll go green, and you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for being late. Sandra has obviously stolen a little bit of my thunder. I just want to address the thing about the works at ground level. They're not at ground level. The cuts of the track are at ground level. In between each row of track, which is 7 loops, I think I counted, it's a 45-degree angle straight down to the adjoining property and then my property. It's a steep slope with flat pieces of track cut, but it's not on a flat slope at all. It's steep. I wanted to speak to the matter of this permit being applied for retrospectively, and you've all stolen my thunder there, meaning that the council was only informed of the intended use of the land long after the track had already been constructed. It's obviously too late to stop the construction, but hopefully it's not too late to maybe have some conditions regarding its use to be agreed upon. I realise this isn't the focus of the meeting, it's about the excavation. However, one of the councillors, which was you, at a previous meeting suggested the intended use of the land would have been discussed if the application had been lodged and the council had been informed about it before the earthworks had been completed without the permit. Moorabool Shire's online info states you must specify the current and proposed use of land when applying for a planning or excavation permit. I read that today looking up the Moorabool site. I'm disappointed that the intended use aspect of the application seems to now be a moot point. I feel it's too important to be sidelined because the permit is retrospective. There's an item on the bottom of page 6 that says the earthworks hereby approved under maintenance must be maintained to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. The main issue I want to be considered is the increasing egress of dust to neighbouring properties. This would seem to me to fall within the council's responsibility to safeguard the rights of neighbours, specifically the protection of drinking water from pollution caused by activities on neighbouring properties. Dust was extremely bad during the construction and will most likely worsen when the track is in use by the motor recreational vehicles proposed. I assume all council rules relating to the use of such vehicles will apply and be adhered to and monitored. However, we have no safeguard of that unless there's some sort of condition added to this application. The issue of raised dust, I feel, really needs to be a condition to ensure it is kept under control. My home is less than 300 metres from the track. I've been there 27 years. I'm used to dust being a normal part of rural living, especially living on a dirt road. During construction, I was aware of vastly increased and unacceptable amounts of dust coming inside the house. The main problem, though, is the ongoing pollution of my water supply and everyone else on the mountain. There's no town water on Mount Buninyong, a fact that seemed to come as quite a surprise to some of the councillors present at the last meeting held regarding this application. Residents rely on rain collected in tanks from the roof. During the construction phase, I had to have my roof and guttering washed, main house water tanks cleaned and drained, and a filter tap installed for drinking water. Now we only drink bottled water because it has worsened, and we put up with the discoloured water in the shower and for washing clothes, etc. It's completely unacceptable. There are only 2 houses east of my house. The neighbours directly adjacent to number 49 have moved away and are trying to sell their house. The only traffic using the road beyond my house is the residents and visitors to number 49. The bike track isn't even in use yet, even though we're not supposed to talk about it. Although motorised bike traffic on the road, a dirt road, has recently increased markedly, as has the dust. I'm deeply concerned about the increase in airborne dust once the track is in use. It's dismissed here on page 14, says dust is dismissed as not under consideration for this permit. I just think it's too important an issue to have no forum where it can be even discussed. It also states, as such, there will be minimum dust emissions given the low height of jumps above natural ground level. I disagree, as we've said. It's not natural ground level. The track goes up and down in a windy thing on a 45-degree angle.
I'll get you to summarise.
The area has been cut. It's 22.5 acres. Sorry, not 22, 2.2 acres, almost a hectare. It's got 11 corners, 6 of them are hairpins. It's very sloped. Dust raised will be flying up above the height of the few trees that are around the track itself. Summer's hot, always dry. There will always be dust. Bushfire has engulfed half of the mountain last year. The south side was almost totally taken out. This year, the conditions were described twice as catastrophic. On this matter, last year, same council, I think, raised fire safety concerns in regard to the bikes that are going to use the track. I'll skip down to my last sentence. Please consider the impact of granting this permit without addressing the conjoined issues of what happens once the excavation is approved and the track is in operation and there are no agreed conditions in place to ensure that the neighbours' concerns are addressed. Retrospectivity has blurred the lines a bit, I think, and some conditions really need to be improved upon before, need to be agreed upon before this is accepted as a done deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Thank you, Kay.
Thanks.
Jared, Councillor Bingham. Sorry, mate. Do you want to speak to Kay?
No, I've got a question. I've got a question of officers. I remember because bushfire was largely discussed, but and the reason we deferred it was to have extra talks and negotiations with applicants, objectors, look at the conditions. Has any of that occurred?
So through the chair, if you go to, there is a description of what has been provided since the DAC meeting, which is background to the current proposal on the top of page 13. So the applicant was advised of the concerns, particularly how the e-bikes would be used and about dust controls. They responded to explain the operation of those bikes. They also provided a safety standard attached to those bikes. And with the dust control, they mentioned about how would we enforce it, and I suppose we'd go back to that we've got conditions in place, which is that maintenance condition and also the tree protection condition.
What is the maintenance condition?
You can't actually ask questions.
Mr Mayor, just question of the officers, so what are the maintenance conditions?
So the maintenance to the satisfaction of the responsibility is this track can't, for example, if there's, potholes or whatever, it'd be made in a safe condition. It doesn't be extended, whether it be, the mounds that are, the little jumps that have been put in place are maintained. So, it is a safe, drivable passage, but also with the maintenance, you're also looking at sediment runoff. So it is maintained so that sediment doesn't run off beyond the track boundaries. And that's been evident from the current site when you go there.
And dust?
Councillor Berry.
Well, thanks, Mr Mayor. Kay Arnold, and this is for the officers, please. Kay Arnold mentioned the egress of dust from this track. I note point number 5, sediment discharges must be restricted from any construction activities. Doesn't talk about the amount. How do we know how much, dependent on the weather? Is that, you totally think that no sediment would move from the area where the mounds are built, where the track's built?
As through the chair, so as stated in the report, we said about the minimal dust emissions. There will be some dust exposed as bikes go, but that is not going to travel great distances with, one motorbike within a private property. And again, it's nothing unusual what we would see like ploughing a field, that dust does get emitted. But with this one, we've actually got vegetation surrounding the track. So it's not an open field, it's actually surrounded by that vegetation, which does help mitigate that emissions through the site.
Can I have a second question, please? And Kay Arnold did speak about the amount of water, and it's tank water out there that might be required to I don't know about these tracks, but might be required to water down the tracks, given there might be a lot of dry weather, dust. Do we know what amount of water would be required to keep the dust down on these tracks?
Through the chair, there's no requirement for them to water the track down. It's the same as a driveway to a property. There's no requirement for people to water down their driveway and stop dust. The permit is purely for the works to create the track. The ongoing use and management of the track is the same as a driveway.
Our driveways aren't dirt, they're nearly all bitumen up there.
Questions? Unless someone else would like to ask the question, it seems to be the norm.
Yeah, sorry, so I was going to additionally add, so with these tracks, there's going to be a few mounds around the track, or is it specifically flat tracks?
So through the chair, it is correct that it is on quite significant sloping land. So the residence is actually at the high point of their land, and then it slopes significantly down. But the actual track above, so in other words, when we talk about track above natural ground level, so the amount of, let's say, whether it be mounds above natural ground level, they are quite low to the ground. So it's essentially been scraped using the contours of the land with some very small bumps.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bingham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I remember very clearly that at the last meeting I raised the issue about lack of fire breaks because track is right on the boundary. As again, bushfire is a significant issue, potential issue. So was the issue raised with the applicant about what his plan is to mitigate that with the creation of fire breaks?
So Through the chair, bushfire was not considered, so under a bushfire management overlay, you don't require a planning permit for earthworks. So there is no controls, whether it be a bushfire management plan needing to be prepared or certain bushfire mitigation measures as a result of the earthworks.
Okay. Any further questions, councillors? We have a recommendation in front of us. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Sullivan. Do I have a seconder? Rod, Councillor Ward. Anyone opposed? Okay. Councillor Sullivan.
Mr Mayor, I know this is quite a complex issue, but what is before us, I think, when Councillor Tatchell earlier on, asked the officers, is this just related to earthworks only and not the use? And I think we have to sort of keep that into consideration in our deliberation, because that's what is before us, just the earthworks only. And I know it's sort of blurred the issue with respect to what the use may be, but this permit does not relate to use. It relates to the construction of the track, and we just have to bear that in mind. I think the people who have addressed this make some very good points, and I think it is up to council to ensure that these conditions are enforced, and I think that's something we can do as part of our enforcement regime to make sure that they are followed through, and I think that would be the safeguard that would be there as I would see it going forward. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Tatchell.
Well, Mr Mayor, it's very rare to get knocked out in the first round, but Councillor Sullivan's argument is exactly right. I can't argue with that. I can't argue with the compliance. I can't argue with the technicality. So what I can argue is about our discretion and what our role is in council. That I can argue. I don't expect to win this debate, but I do expect that we get to a point where if something is noted, especially in a retrospective permit, that we can be acknowledging that in the permit. And I think that's an anomaly in the report, and it's an anomaly in the planning laws, that we end up in a position where a very legitimate complaint can't be included, which certainly puts people at a great disadvantage. I do know the area up there, and I'm well aware of the road networks in that a lot of the properties do have bitumen driveways, and people have put a lot of time and money in to make sure that their piece of paradise is well looked after. It's also a case of, yes, it is tank water, as most people that grew up in the rural sector would understand that how precious our tank water is. And, you know, I cite that if the dog fell in the water tank, you make sure you rig it out first when you take it out. That's the reality of water in rural areas. I will quote this, that lithium vehicles or agricultural vehicles are relatively new in terms of where they sit in the rural landscape. They may be capable of being used outside of that, and I know that the good councillors will argue that I shouldn't even be arguing this, but I'm going to anyway, because that's what I do. And the point is that we don't know, and I think the reasonable question should be that in a rural landscape, if we are going to run lithium vehicles, we need to have a far better understanding of the unintended consequences of when we allow these vehicles to operate within that region. And the other problem I have with this is that, whilst I accept that people need recreation on their properties, and I accept that farmers need ag bikes to catch the sheep. I've never seen a lithium one yet, but I'm sure they'll come, or a lithium four-wheeler. I'm sure they'll come, and I hope it's well investigated. Anyone who's watched electric Grand Prix motorcycle racing will realise the great lengths they go to for the invisible fires of lithium batteries, and how important it is to understand that technology before you introduce another party to it being the rural landscape. Look, I know I can't win this argument, and as I said, Councillor Sullivan knocked me out in the first round. He normally gives me a chance, but I thought I'd throw my feet in the sandbox anyway, put the gloves on for the second round and see if he'd give me another look in. But look at his face, I don't think he's going to. But can I suggest in the future that if something is noted and people put in a permit that may have the capacity to pass all of those technical tests, that if something's mentioned in there and we know what that purpose is, instead of having these constant anomalies of things that shouldn't, that we can actually include that in the presentation and say, well, look, is it good for the environment? And look, I've been going up Mount Bunninghong for as long as I've gathered this snow on my roof. And I just think every now and then this council needs to have some flexibility and acknowledge those anomalies and maybe, just push the rules, even if we lose them at VCAT, just to show that there is a problem with the way it's set out. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I think Councillor Sullivan did sum it up perfectly. This permit is about the earthworks. Last time it came up, we spent a lot of time discussing the merits of two-cylinder motorbikes versus four-cylinder motorbikes versus electric motorbikes. And the reality is none of that's relevant because it is in a farming zone. The applicant could go and buy 4 strokes, 2 strokes, and ride them around the fence line of their paddock to their own pleasure. So I was pleased to see the report address sediment runoff concerns. I note Councillor Bingham's concerns about fire breaks, but I understand again, that's not part of the permit conditions. This is simply a permit for the earthworks, and I don't think there is any reason we should not be approving this under our current planning rules. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Bingham? Do you want to speak?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll go in for bat with Councillor Tatchell. 2 on 2 at this stage. But look, for a permit that is not supposed to consider use, the use is repeated many times. I was just in the process of counting how many times. I was up to about 7. But the use of this track is continually inside this report. So I really feel comfortable not taking in the use in my decision. The great thing about, and Councillor Tatchell touched on it, but, I think we all run for council because, at a point in time when, we thought, we could do a better job. We probably could have used some discretion and maybe bend the rules a little bit. It's not black and white. As Councillor Tatchell said, we have discretion, and my discretion is, in my decision, I'm taking into account future use. And there are so many issues that have been raised, and I just can't approve it at this stage. So for those reasons, I will be voting to refuse.
Thank you, Councillor Bingham. Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Are you for or against?
I am for Councillor Sullivan's recommendation. Overall, the proposal is compliant with provisions in the Moorabool Planning Scheme. The earthworks are minor, nor will it change the flow of water across the property boundary. And permit conditions can manage the sediment runoff. So I fully concur with Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Berry?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. No, I'm against this, and after listening to the objectors, because the permit is about the earthworks, after listening to them, given the tank water situation, given the egress of dust, I'm not convinced that we're not going to get a bad weather situation and it forms problems for neighbouring properties. We don't know and are not 100% sure the runoff is not going to affect those properties. So given weather conditions, lack of tank water to keep the dust down, I will be opposing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Councillor Sullivan, would you like to close it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think all my fellow councillors make very valid points in their summation. I think the applicants have said, and quite rightly so, this is a retrospective permit we're dealing with. Having read a few VCAT appeals, VCAT does not distinguish between something that is retrospective when it comes to it. They just deal with it as if it's an application, regardless of whether the works are already done. I think the issues that my fellow councillors raise with respect to this is something that we perhaps should actually look at it at a strategic level and tighten up some of the land use policies in the farming zone, particularly on small parcels of land, because in small parcels of land, you know, you've got neighbours cheek by jowl, as opposed to if it was a large holding, it's well away from every other residence and any other neighbour. So I think from that point, I think we perhaps should revisit that ourselves and look at it from a strategic point of view and try and address it. It doesn't help now, but it's just something going forward. But I just come back to the arguments just made that it is only for the development of earthworks, and I think we just have to focus on that. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. We have a mover in Councillor Sullivan, a seconder in Councillor Ward. All those in favour? Carried. Moving along, 9.2, earthworks including screening mounds and vegetation removal, 14 trees at 682 Glenmore Road, Rowsley. Before we start, councillors, to give you a bit more time, we have two written submissions from Wendy Gillespie and Ian McGee. They're both in front of us. Moving along, firstly, we'll call Alan Hullier.
With respect to the committee and the council office here, due to recent events occurring yesterday and today, I have to withdraw my request to speak. Thank you.
If that's okay. Thank you. Moving along, Sarah Mitchell.
Mr Mayor, I couldn't hear that. Can I just be informed what happened then?
He basically, he no longer can speak in regards to the matter, so he's withdrawn.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Moving along to Sarah Mitchell. The same situation, switch the button on, it'll go green, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I would just like to respectfully request some additional time. This is a pretty complicated matter, as I know you guys are aware. I would say, some extensive knowledge around special water supply catchments. I have, professional and educational experience in applying planning schemes, legislation and case law across Victoria. I would request approximately 6 or 7 minutes.
We'll see how we go after 3.
Okay, so I'm a long-term resident of Roseley. I've lived in Roseley for 17 years. My husband and I bought our property in 2009. We love Roseley. We love the local environment. My husband is a horticulturist. He's worked at the Werribee Zoo for 23 years. We were involved in the rehabilitation of the Parwin Creek when Melbourne Water were releasing grants to purchase trees to plant along the creek in 2011. I have a young family, a 6-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. So whilst there has been strong opposition to this proposal, I do stand here in support of it. And would like to, further elaborate as to why. I acknowledge the concerns that have been raised. I too have seen the YouTube video of men in hazmat suits, but having a young family and living, my property is probably one of about 9 that's got a direct line of sight to the quarry. My back paddock, it's 500 metres, I would say. I contacted Mr. Starbuck and asked him, what the go was. It turns out that they were licensed asbestos removalists who were disposing of an old asbestos shed that had been on the property for decades. All the necessary WorkSafe approvals were obtained and, to the best of my knowledge, provided to the council. And Nearmap historical imagery corroborates the shed's removal. So The specific matter before the committee today is around the construction of bund walls. Now, although I'm the only resident here speaking in support of it, I do have friends in the region that I obviously have made over 17 years, and one particular resident who was instrumental with it in authoring and providing images for this book, which is around the reclamation of Rosalie Valley. They were keen for me to deliver some information around the benefits of bund walls, because erosion and the transfer of sediment into our creek and down all the way to Melton Reservoir has been an issue for Rosalie for around a century. The former Soil Conservation Authority reported that the sediment from Rosalie Valley alone contributed to 75% of the sediment that caused the Melton Reservoir to decrease in 22% in its capacity in the 1950s. So it's always been a huge problem in Rosalie. The Soil Conservation Authority also reports that one of the most successful and proactive erosion control methods used to address that issue was the construction of diversion banks. These diversion banks successfully mitigated extensive soil erosion and substantially reduced the sediment delivery to the Melton Reservoir. Bund walls are similar in nature and offer a level of protection to Parwin Creek, which is a declared special water supply catchment area. There's quite a few, there's a bit of information in this book if anybody would be interested. There's also a publication released last year by, I believe he's a local, Chris Smith, who titled Land, Loss and Recovery in the Parwin Valley, and that also talks about diversion banks being an effective method. In addition to erosion control, because anybody who knows the site would know that the open pit is high up on the escarpment. It's approximately 50-metre difference in elevations. So that's a pretty steep slope, and during significant rainfall events, that results in a lot of sediment, flowing down into the creek. But in addition to that, bund walls provide, visual screening. My children go to Bacchus Marsh Grammar, and I drive past Mattingly Brown Coal every day, and that's what it looks like from an aerial perspective. But this was taken yesterday. That's what I see when I drive past. I've had to look at that open pit for 17 years and drive past it at least twice a day, sometimes 4 times a day. So, to not be able to see that is great.
Yeah, I'll get you to summarise.
Okay, so I did want to raise concerns around the aspects of the assessment process and the inconsistency in the interpretation of the scheme and what triggers permit requirements. So, as I said, I do have quite extensive knowledge around the application of planning schemes in my employment. And this is a very complicated site, but there are some errors, I believe, that have been made in the recommendations around what triggers permits. Are you happy to hear further?
Oh, you've...
Yep.
As quick as you can.
Yeah, okay. So special
Well,
use
you're all
zone.
right with that, councillors? Everyone's okay with that? Yeah.
So the special use zone. So obviously originally it was deemed that it didn't trigger a permit requirement, and that position has now changed in the current agenda. Now the special use zone doesn't require a permit for industry, and the definition of industry is in, I think it's clause 7303 in all Victorian planning schemes, and this site essentially meets that definition. I can provide, further elaboration if you require. The Mattingly Brown Coal Development Plan, that you can't assess an application on something that doesn't apply to the property. And your Mattingly planning study, the October 2025 version, that acknowledges that position of the council.
I'll leave it there, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that. I know it's not easy. Any questions, councillors? Thank you. Aurelia Purview. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. There's a couple of things I'd like to raise and also a couple of questions I'd like to answer. The objections that have been made in a written submission, Ian McGee and the Gillespies, we haven't seen them, so I'm not sure how to address those.
Would you like a copy?
If I could, please.
Just a point of order, Mr Mayor, maybe the Speaker would like some time to evaluate those, if you'd like to...
Do you want to call it a quick adjournment?
I think we need a very quick adjournment to give
Okay. All in favour? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr? Councillor Kerr?
Sorry, thank you. So having removed...
Hang on one sec. Oh,
Council.
Thank you. So we re-adjourn. Mover, Councillor Bingham, seconder. Councillor Kerr, all in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Having reviewed the minutes of the previous meeting held on 10th of December 2025, we request that the following matters be considered prior to the decision made on this permit. This will assist in clarifying any potential issues that may otherwise require discussion or resolution at the meeting, should the relevant information not be included or addressed. This ensures all relevant facts and updates are before the committee from the outset, promoting an efficient and informed decision. The objector, I think we would all recall the Anastasi family. They're our adjacent landowner. The discussion of the proposed earthworks to the council on that meeting was predominantly focused on the objections submitted by the adjacent landowner. The summary of objections contained in the agenda clearly indicated that the concerns raised were not issues of genuine planning merit. From this, we were sympathetic to their concerns and their objections. We'd like to advise that following the stalling of earlier 2025 negotiations, due to the Anastasi's family demand of the purchase for their property at an inflated price of $1.9 million, an agreement has now been reached that is fair to both parties. The settlement of this property is tomorrow. The council has inaccurately represented the historical planning context of the site in relation to previous permits in the minutes of the previous DAC meeting. Specifically, the following statement appears under the subheading Earthworks within the main heading Discussion on page 42. There are no prior planning permits, including rehabilitation plans that required large-scale screening mounds around the property boundaries. This assertion is incorrect. While there are no current active planning permits or approvals, this property has had them. Planning permit number 52/89 issued by the Moorabool Shire Council to Savage Minerals, a copy which we have provided previously but happy to provide again, includes conditions which states, the mining operation shall be conducted in accordance with the submitted work proposal unless modified by specific conditions. No variation from this proposal shall occur without the written consent of the council. The working proposal referenced in this permit explicitly includes provisions for screening bund walls. Diagram 1 on page 3, which I'll circulate, extracted from the 1989 working proposal, illustrates that the proposed placement of the perimeter bund walls at an elevation measurement of approximately 160 metres, with the top of the pit face located at approximately 210 metres, the entirety of the working proposals can be provided. A current aerial image sourced from Nearmaps database confirms that the proposed earthen bunds walls at the perimeter of the site would align closely with those proposed being situated at the approximate 160 metre elevation. The measurement to the top of the pit face remains approximately 210 metres, also consistent with the historical proposals. These historical documents demonstrate that large-scale screening mounds around the property boundaries were required and approved under prior planning arrangements. The council's statement overlooks or misrepresents this established permit history and associated screening requirements. The proposed refusal ground is, I'll be quick, sorry.
No, you're just summary.
The proposed earthworks is unrelated to an existing or approved clay extraction on the site. This ground is misconceived and should not form the basis of refusal. The current planning permit, PA 2025076, has not been lodged under the extractive industry provisions of the Moorabool Planning Scheme. It seeks approval for earthworks, specifically bund walls for visual screening in their own right, independent of any clay extraction activity. An endorsed work plan under the Mineral Resources Act 1990 remains in the process of being obtained, and there is no statutory prerequisite for extractive industry approval before earthworks of this nature can be considered or approved. For completeness, ELI's position on the applicable MPS provisions triggering a permit requirement is currently the subject of a separate proceeding before VCAT. More fundamentally, if there was a current planning permit for the clay extraction, the construction of bund walls are expressly exempt under clause 52.09-6 of the MPS. This exemption applies to such structures where incidental to resource-related activities, regardless of whether an active or approved extraction is underway, and only requires an endorsed work plan. In summary, the refusal ground incorrectly assumes a necessary nexus to clay extraction that does not exist under the scheme. The earthworks must be appropriately assessed on their merits without the extraneous link, notwithstanding our permission on permit triggers.
You done? Thank you.
Not really, but I
Oh, no, that's okay. Any question, councillors? Councillor Bingham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Question to Mr Bazunu. So if this likely goes to VCAT, there's a possibility that VCAT will turn around and say that didn't require a permit anyway? Can you expand on that?
Now. Or would you like to take the
Thank
question?
you. Through Mr Chair. That is what the declaration is asking for, whether there's a permit trigger for earthworks. What we've got in front of us is an active permit. So council has to consider that permit on its merit. And because it's legal proceedings, I would prefer not to go into much more detail than that.
Thank you. That's it, Councillor Bingham. Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question for the Speaker, if I may. Thank you for your letter, and also you did comment when you were speaking earlier that the property at 1 Davidson's Lane, Rowsley, you have purchased it with settlement due tomorrow.
That's correct.
Now, is that settlement dependent on tonight's outcome or not?
No, it is not. I do have a copy of the contract of sale and the sales agreement for full transparency, but that is not one of the conditions.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you. Thank you, Aurelia. I now call up James Starbuck. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and everyone here tonight. Just for clarification, the one of the conditions of the sale is that the objection is removed. So that should happen by latest Friday. As the applicant, we have sought to maintain open lines of communication throughout this entire process. However, we have found that there are some evolving guidelines on what triggers a permit, or not, which I think is a question that just got brought up before, with some uncertainty. And despite extending multiple invitation to council officers to conduct multiple site inspections, we have yet to receive a response. I would like a more consistent approach, if possible. My intentions of the property. At the Development Assessment Committee meeting held 10th of December 2025, there was a suggestion that the site may be intended to be a landfill for clean fill. While not explicitly stated, there were insinuations that the site could be used also for disposal of contaminated fill. Those suggestions, I want to say, are categorically inaccurate and do not reflect our intentions at all. The property has long-withstanding historical designation for mining and extractive industry purposes that started in 1908 and includes specific provisions reserving government powers and third-party rights related to the mining activities. The current title continues to record this reservation. Furthermore, historical aerial imagery continues to show existing open pit excavation dating back as far as 1931. Our clear and stated intention is to resume clay extraction at this site. We acknowledge that some of the process is very complex. I've never done it before. And we haven't done it 100% correctly with our permit process. However, we are now progressing appropriately. Draft work plans are nearing finalisation, and we have engaged a qualified heritage advisor to address cultural heritage management requirements in full compliance. The statement on page 23 of the agenda, the Earth Lodge Industries intends to reapply for the clay extraction permit in the future upon issue of the Work Authority approval, is incorrect. Under the Mineral Resources 1990 related guidelines from Resources Victoria, the established sequence is as follows. I can run you through that if you would like, but that's an inaccuracy that you have there. And finally, rehabilitation. The agenda asserts that the proposal was never part of a rehabilitation plan. This is also factually incorrect. Bund walls have always been required, and I can provide you the permits where they are explicitly drawn. And in early 2025, Mark Lovell of Moorabool Council asserted that no planning permit was required for the construction of these bund walls. We submit that Mark was in fact correct. The rehabilitation component of the plan remains current and valid. Under the MRSD Act, rehabilitation obligations do not cease or expire under cancellation of a work authority. Section 78A and related provisions impose a continuing duty on the former holder to rehabilitate the land. The expired work authority for this site expressly states that the holder remains bound by a rehabilitation plan after expiry or cancellation. This language confirms a surviving legal obligation under state resource legislation enforceable independently of any planning permit. The endorsed rehabilitation plan that I'm referring to specifically included the construction of bund walls at around a height of 15 metres for visual screening and erosion mitigation. These bund walls therefore represent an outstanding element of a binding rehabilitation commitment. Proposing to construct them now fulfills that legacy obligation, stabilise the land, minimise long-term visual and environmental impacts, outcomes that are entirely consistent with the principles of orderly, sustainable site management under Section 65 decision guidelines of your planning scheme. The proposed, I'll summarise because I know that that's coming next.
And just don't mention bung wall again.
The proposal are not merely desirable, they are key engineering environmental component of the validly endorsed rehabilitation plan. We submit that the walls are related to the historic extractive use of the land via binding rehabilitation plan obligation, and we remain committed to use only clean, compliant and meeting all relevant of environmental and planning controls.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just have a question for officers on number 1.E, the proposed earthworks do not represent the orderly planning of the area. Can you just expand on that?
Through the chair, when we look at orderly planning, you look at how it functions relating to zone and overlay control. So in this situation, we've seen that the earthworks did not create any orderly planning as far as their relationship to the site and to the controls that apply to the site.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bingham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is to Mr Lovell. So originally, and I'm just taking the Mr Starbuck's word, but so originally, if you suggested a permit wasn't needed, my question is, what are we all doing here tonight?
So through the chair, it was correct. So initial advice given to the applicant that a permit is not required to do rehabilitation to a former mine area. So rehabilitation to a mine area is actually stabilising the extracted area and being in compliance with a rehabilitation plan. And that rehabilitation plan would include landscaping, would include things such as bundle, but that is related to the extraction area. What we've got before us is actually earth mounds around the perimeter, not around the extraction area.
Subsequent to that, so what's the difference between the extractive area and on the land? I just want to get that clarified.
So as I said, rehabilitation is specific to the actual extracted area. The proposal that you got before you is to do works on areas that wasn't extracted for mining. It was actually land outside that extraction area. It included trees, which there is a proposal to remove. So this is actually bund walls around the property boundaries, which does require planning permission.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Tatchell.
For officers, if I can, Mr Mayor, is there still an existing bond for rehabilitation on this property?
So through the chair, the original planning permit, so that reference made by the previous speaker, there was a bond paid, but as far as details of whether that bond's been enacted on, I can't provide that information.
First question, do we know how much that bond was? The report suggests 10.5.
I can help if you would like.
That's all right. We'll get there.
First, I'll get to you, Mr Starbuck. So back to this. So according to this report, it says there was 10,500 lodged in 1997. Is that still current? And would that cover the rehabilitation of what's there today?
So through the chair, that would have been an appropriate figure back when the permit was issued. And again, in today's environment, that will, of course, $10,000 will be insufficient to do all the works that were originally proposed as part of the rehabilitation.
Thanks. I've got another one if I can, Mr Mayor. Mr Starbuck, you're quite the celebrity. I watched a couple of your YouTube videos. You don't really have much respect for council or permits, do you, really?
No, I don't.
No, that's good. It'll probably help with this application. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr Starbuck. All right, councillors, we have a recommendation in front of us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Tatchell. A seconder? Councillor Minari. Are there any opposed? I'll throw it over to you, Councillor Tatchell.
Yes, Mr Mayor, look, I'm comfortable with the report that was presented to us tonight, so I'll just approve it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bingham.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I just want to enter debate because I just want to make the meeting drag on. But if this motion were to fail, I would foreshadow a deferral. Now, I know it's already been deferred, but for the simple fact that if it is deferred, that gives the applicant the ability to go to VCAT, and I think this should be decided at VCAT, not a local government. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Minari.
Thank you. We've gone over this quite a few times. We've asked a lot of questions, and I'm comfortable with with what the planners have come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak for or against? Okay, we have a mover in Councillor Thatchell. We have a seconder. Councillor Kerr, are you for or against?
I'm for it, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, I'd just like to say it's an excellent, unbiased planning report. In conclusion, the site is a former Kay Island clay quarry. The disposal of clean fill to a quarry site, not directly related to endorsed plan of works approval, does not represent the orderly planning of the area or the zone purpose. The proposed earthwork should be refused with the grounds as specified. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tatchell, you close.
As I said in the beginning, I'm happy with the report. Let's go to VCAT. Thank you.
We've got a mover in Councillor Tatchell, a seconder in Councillor Minari. All those in favour? Carried. Moving along to other business, Councillor Sullivan.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other business, Councillor Kerr?
No other business. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any other business, Councillor?
Nothing here,
Tatchell?
Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Minari?
Nothing from me, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Berry?
No other business, thank you, Mr Mayor.
And Councillor Bingham?
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Freeman?
No other business. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ward?
No other business, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The date of the next meeting is the 15th of April. I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you.